So we are coming to the next section of this mindfulness for young adult session. So basically here the idea is that we are discussing Sutta teaching related to some practice, and we were discussing Sabbasava Sutta. There Buddha has come up with 7 strategies to overcome various stains, and here I have listed it: overcoming various stains by seeing, that is to reflect on one's own mind and using the Yoniso Manasikara, wise reflection, and not just staying at the surface level, rather going deep or going to the source, so that we get some understanding about what is really going on. And then using wisely, as we are using our house, maybe our vehicles, our clothes, medicine, and whatever the other utilities, commodities, whenever we are using, so we are using them wisely. And that is the other way that we can overcome various defilements. There's a high possibility of arising various defilements as we are unmindfully using them, unwisely using them. So Buddha recommends to recognize or understand the proper usage and understand why we are using them, what are the benefits. So likewise, there are many methods to overcome various defilements in our day-to-day activities, and that is discussed as the third one. And as a second one, we discuss how we need to restrain our senses. Even though we can see various things, we are not immediately going and seeing various things. Rather, we maintain some amount of restrainment. Similarly, we have to maintain some amount of restrainment in our ears, our tongue, our nose, our body, and the mind. So these senses are to be restrained, have to be guarded. Then we can avoid the arising of unarisen taints. And if there are arisen taints, we can allow them to fade away. Then we discussed how we need to endure certain things sometimes. There may be hardships, there may be difficult situations, and we might have tried our best, but there is a certain amount, certain part that we need to be patient. We need to endure those situations. Otherwise, we may get into various troubles, get into arguments with others. But if we have some patience, if we are able to tolerate, then there's a higher possibility that we are maintaining a equanimous mind, a peaceful mind. And then there are certain people, there are certain dangerous places that we need to avoid, because they may be not suitable to associate. Therefore, when we are associating, we need to be careful on what we associate, and accordingly we can selectively associate whatever things which are beneficial and contributing towards the wholesomeness in our mind. Then we can select them, we can associate them. On the other hand, if there are situations, if there are various feelings, if there are various people, if there are various places, that shows that once we associate, we are becoming little negative, we are becoming our faith is being destroyed, or we get on to various doubts, or our practice become little deteriorated. On such situation, we need to understand, okay, those are not the people to associate, those are not the places to associate, those are not the occasions to associate, that we rather avoid them. So likewise, we have to use common sense as we are continuing our life, what to associate and what not to associate. And so accordingly, we have to avoid certain places, certain people, so that we are able to maintain our wholesome mind. And then there is removing part. When various defilements, hindrances arise in the mind, we need to remove them, we need to allow them to fade away rather than encourage them. So there are various levels. So before the fair amount of mindfulness is available, so we need to use some techniques to overcome defilements. But as our mindfulness is grown, we can even use the mindfulness techniques to overcome defilements. So at that time we can face to face be with the defilements, recognize the defilements, and then defilements or the hindrances themselves become a certain source of arising wisdom, source of arising mindfulness. So there are variety of methods available to handle defilements in our mind, and that is what we discussed in the removing section. And now we are coming to the last section, that is the developing. So this is where the meditation is involved. So there Buddha directly take us to the Bojjhanga, how one develops various enlightenment factors. So as you know, it is not that immediately it is possible to develop enlightenment factors. Rather, we have to come in a little long way as we are properly developing enlightenment factors. So it is not that immediately we can develop enlightenment factors. That's the kind of a gradual path available to do this. So actually we discussed this in the Anapanasati Sutta when we are discussing Anapanasati Sutta, where Anapanasati has the capacity to develop Kayanupassana, and it has the capacity to develop Vedananupassana, and it can be used to develop Chittanupassana as well as Dhammanupassana. We discussed this under Anapanasati section. Now I have taken the same approach here just to explain how we develop enlightenment factors. Now here you can see there are 16 steps. Each Anupassana has 4 steps. And when one develops Kayanupassana, Buddha says, as one's mindfulness is fairly developed to some extent, and then one may have unwavering mindfulness. So at the beginning we don't have such a fairly, say, fixed mindfulness or developed mindfulness, but our mindfulness is fairly weak, and also it drifts, does not stay longer on a particular selected object. Rather it jumps from this to that. And in order to recognize certain phenomena, we need to maintain our attention on a fairly long time on a particular phenomena, and then only we can get a proper understanding about what is really going on. So that indicates that we need to maintain again and again our attention on a selected place or selected object. So at that time Buddha says, then that particular person, whoever the yogi, has this unwavering mindfulness, has this untroubled or undisturbed mindfulness. So he can maintain proper mindfulness, he can maintain continuous mindfulness. So at that time Buddha says he is developing Sati Sambojjhanga. That is how he started to develop Sati Sambojjhanga, the mindfulness enlightenment factor. And he does not stop it at one chance, but rather he continues it again and again. Bhavita Bahuli Kata. He is continuing it as a practice. Again and again he is applying his attention to various objects, and again his mind gets properly become mindful about these various phenomena. So as a result, the contribution towards this Sati Sambojjhanga happens. Say for example, assume that you are now practicing Anapanasati, mindfulness on breathing. So at that time you are continuously getting in breaths, continuously getting out breaths. And at the beginning, your mind does not appreciate it. Your mind simply drifts towards the various previous incidents, past occurrings, and again to various future plans. So it doesn't behave as you wish. It is sort of doesn't have enough mindfulness, sharpened mindfulness. But later, because of your continuous effort, assume now you are fairly successful, and you can maintain your attention for a long time for sequence of breaths. Say 50 breaths, 75 breaths, 100 breaths. So likewise, continuously breaths happen, breaths occur, and now you are able to maintain your attention on each breath. Now you can understand, okay, now the mindfulness has established. So this is how mindfulness enlightenment factor starts to grow, starts to develop. And then Buddha says, one does not stop there. Rather, once the mindfulness has fairly established, one is observing it, carefully inquiring it, investigating it, examines it. So this examination, this observation, this investigation leads to develop Dhammavicaya, the Dhammavicaya enlightenment factor, or the investigation enlightenment factor. And then suppose he is continuing this again and again, because it requires fair amount of effort, because you need to pay attention, closely pay attention, and again sometimes it's difficult, there are various obstacles, but you are putting enough effort to overcome these obstacles. When your mind says that it is difficult, it is a little suffering, it has a little friction, but you are not discouraged. Again and again you apply your attention to various phenomena arising, and you start to examine these phenomena. So this examination happens continuously because of your ongoing effort. You have some relentless effort that you are not giving up. Even though these phenomena happen very quickly, you are not giving up. So you are maintaining this effort. So that is how the effort enlightenment factor, Viriya Sambojjhanga, going to be developed. And then Buddha says, as we are developing it properly, as we are becoming successful, then kind of a niramisa piti, unworldly kind of happiness arising. It is not only at this particular place, but any other place. Even when you are enjoying a kind of a samadhi. So there may be an unworldly happiness. It is not a happiness that you are gaining through seeing various sights. It is not that happiness coming through listening to some music. It is not a kind of a happiness that you are getting through smelling through various odors, neither using various tastes or various tactile sensations. And again, it is not you are enjoying because of your fantasizing, daydreaming. Rather, your mind is very quiet, very silent, and your eyes are closed, and it may be a very quiet place. So it is not through the senses that you become happy, but rather because of this process become successful. So you are maintaining fairly clean mind, free from defilements, free from hindrances, and again that mind is fairly concentrated, and you are now enjoying some happiness, what you call as a rapture. So this is what Buddha called Piti Sambojjhanga, the rapture enlightenment factor. Whenever you are enjoying this sort of unworldly kind of happiness, niramisa piti, Buddha says that is how we develop Piti Sambojjhanga, rapture enlightenment factor. And then sometimes everything happens very smoothly and everything calms down. You feel like floating, you feel like very pleasant, calm, tranquil. And this is how we develop tranquility, enlightenment factor. Passaddhi Sambojjhanga. So at that time there are no any friction. Your body is giving full support. There are no any sort of a pain, any hindrances, any obstacles. So you are in a very smooth path, like you are taken to a highway. There are no any other upcoming vehicles, and you don't have to worry much about, because everything happens very smoothly. And therefore you feel quite happy, you feel comfortable. So then this tranquility enlightenment factor, Passaddhi Sambojjhanga, develops. And again, assume now your mind is well concentrated on each and every phenomena, various phenomena arising, and you don't need to struggle. It does not waver, it does not shift. Rather, each and every phenomena you are quietly keeping your attention. It is properly investigated, it is properly examined, and each object being well concentrated. So like you are putting a slide under a microscope, so this microscope is quite stable, and that slide stay still. So this stillness, this concentration is there. So that is how Buddha says the concentration enlightenment factor, samadhi sambojjhanga, being developed. Because different phenomena are arising again and again, and we are carefully keeping our attention there, our focus there. Now the information is visible because we have proper concentration. If our mind is scattered, then we can't recognize various details. These various details are fairly evident because we are maintaining fair amount of concentration. So that is how Buddha says the concentration enlightenment factor, samadhi sambojjhanga, develop. Now assume everything is successful. Now you are in a well-balanced situation. You don't need to struggle, you don't need to strive. Everything happens very smoothly, and each and every phenomena arise by themselves due to various causes, and you are able to keep your attention again and again, and the mindfulness is well established. You are able to recognize various facets of each phenomena. So everything is successful. So at that time you don't need to do anything further. You don't need to further adjust any situation, because now everything is in good adjustment. Everything is well aligned. Everything happens smoothly. Now it's a matter of allowing things to happen. You don't need to intervene now. Now the equanimity enlightenment factor arises. Now everything is in a good equilibrium, equipoise, and now you are allowing things to happen. So this is how the upekha sambojjhanga, equanimity enlightenment factor, going to arise. Now this is how Buddha mentioned in Kaya-anupassana one develops enlightenment factor. Similarly, when you are applying this kind of a situation, same scenario, to various feelings, it may be happy feelings, say it may be painful feelings, it may be equanimous feelings. Similarly, you are developing enlightenment factors. Assume you are able to very clearly recognize various thoughts. If it is a lustful thought, you clearly recognize. If it is a kind of resentful, anger, then you can clearly recognize. If it is jealousy, you can recognize. If it is loving kindness, you can clearly recognize. So you have clear mindfulness around each mental aspect, each thought, and you know clearly when it is arising. You know when it is clearly disappearing, and you are not sort of wavering, and you are clearly understanding it, and you are not being driven by it. So likewise, the mindfulness enlightenment factor, investigation enlightenment factor, effort, and then the rapture, because when things are successful, you don't need to worry, things are happening smoothly. Then the tranquility, concentration, and things are happening smoothly, so you can be maintained sort of an equanimity. So the enlightenment factors are developed as you are developing Chitta-anupassana as well. Now once it comes to Dhamma-anupassana, similarly you may be experiencing or observing various phenomena. It may be mental phenomena, it may be bodily phenomena, it may be how your sense objects are operating. So all these you can observe, and as a result enlightenment factors are going to develop. Now assume that you are fairly now developed enlightenment factors. As a result, now you can maintain fair amount of equanimity. Your mind has recognized how to maintain its equilibrium. It doesn't now want to associate various phenomena. It has seen enough about these various phenomena, and the disadvantages of these phenomena are quite evident. As a result, mind has now let go of various phenomena. But now it has found its freedom, its independence. Now it can maintain its stability, stillness, clarity, spaciousness. So that is where you are sort of getting to a different domain, where it is not necessary to inquire into various phenomena. Rather, you can have a kind of a relaxed attitude. Various phenomena may arise, they may come, they may go, they may pass away, but you don't need to much bother about them, because now you have found the balance. Now you have found a refuge. Now you have found an art how to maintain an unattached mind, how to maintain a equilibrium, how to maintain a spacious mind, how to maintain an unattached mind. So this is something now you are developing. And this is how Buddha says the enlightenment factors are further refined. Because this equilibrium has to be maintained properly, because of our past habits, again and again mind may go and grasp various things, but at that time we have to refine enlightenment factors and we have to move towards particularly to the unattached state of mind, equilibrium state of mind, equanimity state of mind. So therefore Buddha asks us to develop this equanimity, etang santang, etang panitang, yaddang upekha. So this equanimity, Buddha says, is quite refined, quite sublime, and that is fairly rich. So rather than being in the ups and downs of the mind, rather Buddha asks us to come to the middle, maintain equilibrium, maintain the clarity. So therefore you can see the certain enlightenment factors are now giving much prominence and the mind becomes fairly equanimous, and sometimes the other enlightenment factors are also arising and you do sort of a balancing. Sometimes we need to do the balance because say if your mind become lethargic, drowsy, then we need to do further investigation, we need to arouse effort. And on the other hand, if your mind become restless, then you need to stop investigation, rather you need to calm down, you need to concentrate. So likewise, there are two groups in the enlightenment factors. One group is more prone to sort of investigation, prone to more towards the restlessness. Another group more towards the concentration, calming down. So we need to have a kind of a balance between these two groups. The mindfulness is the one giving us the proper picture, clear picture about what to do basically, which group has to be uplifted, which group has to be controlled. So likewise the clear picture given by the mindfulness. So therefore Buddha says mindfulness is required every time. There is no limit in developing mindfulness. But the other enlightenment factors, Buddha says, have to have a proper balance. You don't need to develop it too much, you don't need to reduce it either. So you have to have a proper balance. But in order to have this, in order to decide this proper balance, you need to have mindfulness enough. Now therefore Buddha says, now when you are developing this kind of a mind, so that's a kind of an unattached mind, unassociated mind, mind maintained with a relaxed attitude, then this is in a way refining the enlightenment factors. And therefore Buddha says one develops enlightenment factors supported by seclusion, viveka nisita. So as much as possible your mind enjoys that kind of a seclusion. You don't need to associate so much of incidents, associate various phenomena, memories, past, future. But mind has its own independence. And viraga nisitang. So mind is not that interested about going after various things. Previously it is going after various likes and repelled from various dislikes. But now mind has its own capacity to have its equilibrium, and if things are happening it is not that bothered by it. It has a kind of a dispassion towards everything. Not going after things, not going and grasping things, holding things, but kind of a dispassion aroused in the mind. So therefore Buddha says one develops enlightenment factors associating this sort of a viraga, this sort of a dispassion. And then when things are arising, you know clearly they have the nature to pass away. And once they pass away, you associate that cessation. So the mind being bring towards the cessation. It is not that encourage the arising aspect, rather the cessation aspect being encouraged. Typically in the long journey in our samsara, continuously we have encouraged the arising aspect. Again and again, to each and every object, we are jumping towards the arising side, never observing the passing away side. But now, as we get on to the Dhamma, Buddha asks us to see the complete picture, complete lifespan, rather than jumping from arising to arising, samudaya to samudaya. Now Buddha asks us to see the samudaya as well as the cessation, the nirodha. Again arising, again passing away, again arising, again passing away. So the passing away aspect is something Buddha encourages us to investigate. So once we do that, so then mind gets on to this sort of a cessation where there are no new phenomena being arising. Rather, kind of a resting period is there. Kind of a calmness is there. Tranquility is there. No phenomena being observed. No phenomena being focused. Rather, kind of the clarity, calmness, tranquility is there in the mind. So this cessation Buddha asks us to maintain. And on the other hand, whatever things arise, you have the sort of a desire or sort of a inclination towards relinquishment. You are not now holding things, you are not grasping things, clinging to things, rather you are relinquishing things. Because the yogi has understood the taste of freedom, has understood the taste of letting go, rather than holding on to things which is contributing a lot of suffering, tension, frustration. Now he is enjoying the relinquishment. He likes to maintain a free mind. He likes to maintain a mind free from any attachment, a mind free from any friction, any burden. It's a kind of a lighter mind, a very simple mind, calm mind, clear mind. So there are, whatever arising, he has the nature to relinquish, simply giving it away, simply letting go. So this is how Buddha says to further refine the enlightenment factors. Now this is, if Buddha says, if one develops this kind of enlightenment factors, then they actually guards the mind. They actually start to protect the mind. As a result, the hindrances are being calmed down or rejected, or we can say nullified. Hindrances or any other defilements are being fairly faded away, diluted. Instead, these positive qualities, enlightenment factors, are being developed in the mind. So as a result, the taints are being destroyed, taints are being faded away, they are being weakened, because the mind has its kind of a clarity, mind has its tranquility, mind has its concentration, mind has its stability, mind has its stillness, mindfulness. So the positive atmosphere available in the mind has fairly established. So the possibility of arising defilements are very less. The chances are very less, because your mind is fairly uplifted now, fairly developed now. So this is how Buddha says, when one develops the necessary positive qualities, enlightenment factors, the arisen taints are being reduced, faded away, ceased, and the possibility to arise various taints are being avoided. And this is the seventh method that Buddha says how one can utilize to develop enlightenment, to avoid various taints, asavas. So with that, actually I like to conclude this Sabbasava Sutta, one of the very interesting and very profound sutta, very practical sutta. And as I said, any of these methods can be applied according to the situation. You don't need to wait to develop enlightenment factors or the bhavana, the meditation, till you perfect the previous methods. You can start meditating, you can start developing mindfulness. And similarly, you don't need to wait till you develop any other methods if you want to practice, say, while eating. Say you are having your meal. So at that time, rather than allowing your mind to be affected by greed or any other deluded idea, any other defilement, you can practice this, what you call this, using wisely. Patisevana pahatabba. So likewise, all these techniques are quite practical, pragmatic, and you can use them appropriately according to the situation. And these are in a way kind of a tools that we can use appropriately. Consider them as various tools. According to the situation, we have to use them. Either one tool or many tools can be used. So with that note, I like to conclude today's short Dhamma sermon. Now I open the sessions for questions.
Sorry about that. There are currently 5 questions. Question number 1. Mindful sitting. Dear Bhante, last time you highlighted about the vantage point which can be used to effectively be aware of the thoughts without getting caught to them. Based on my current sitting practice experience, I am thinking of checking this once the breath has become very subtle and the whole body experience is settled. At this point, it is often mentioned by others as well that the thoughts start easily flowing in. Apart from sitting, I want to know what is the stage or point that we can use a vantage point to observe thoughts in the walking practice. With metta, that's the end.
Actually, this can be changed because, say for example, as you develop Kayanupassana in the early stages, so your refuge may be Anapanasati, may be rising and falling. So you can say the vantage point is that. That is the place that you are frequently maintaining, and that becomes your refuge. But later, as you develop even mindfulness on breathing or mindfulness on the rising and falling, so you start to have some sort of a distance observation. Now, previously you are closely associating, closely observing various phenomena, but later, as you are recognizing various facets of the phenomena, now your observation become little distant observation, detached observation. So now where are you staying? Where is your attention being kept? It is true that you are observing maybe the breath, again and again the breath, but it's a kind of a distant, while being somewhere, some other place you are looking at it. So this particular place we can call as a kind of a vantage point, where you are able to step back from the ongoing process and watch it as someone else's process. So this what I call as kind of a vantage point, where you have the facility to look at the ongoing process quite a detached manner, not now holding into it, and you are not fairly closely observing it. You see everything, but you have now understood kind of a balance. You are able to maintain sort of a balance, and you do a sort of a distance observation, and this is quite relaxed, and various phenomena are there, and maybe you can even get on to another stage. Now various, say, sights are there, sounds are there, smells are there, tastes are there, even tactile sensations are there, even thoughts are there, but you are not that interested of anything. So everything becomes sort of a flux. So now you have again a kind of a vantage point, a safe place, a refuge. And while being there, you are observing everything. But you are not selecting anything. Everything appears like a flux. Everything appears like kind of a blurred. So this is another level we can talk of. So you can see the vantage point also is not a kind of fixed thing or fixed place, but it's a kind of an evolving situation. Assume that now you are get on to a situation where there is nothing to hold, nothing to grasp. So your mind is fairly free. So this freedom becomes your vantage point. So you are while maintaining such a freedom, if you like, you can observe the outside. What are things going on in the conditioned world? So therefore this observation is something evolving as we develop mindfulness, as we develop vipassana. It is not a single vantage point that we can say available from throughout the whole vipassana. Rather, it's a kind of a evolving place, we can say.
Question number 2 of mindfulness in day-to-day activities. Dear Bhante, with your guidance, I could build a regular practice of mindfulness with breathing sitting and walking activities. Much merits for you and the organizers. Sitting and walking seem very profound and align with the discussions as well. Also, we hear many participants talk about similar experiences. However, with day-to-day activities, I still struggle to get to a stable practice. Some of these practices, such as brushing teeth, falls into observing body sensations or kayanupasana practice, and some, such as being aware of frustrations or anger, fall into purely observing the thoughts. Is it possible to simplify this at the beginning such that I would observe what happens to the body in all the day-to-day instances? Much merits for Bhante for the invaluable service. With that, that's the end.
Yeah, sure. Actually, you need to find a way to sort of gladden the mind rather than making it a little burden. Because if you are trying to observe so much of detail at the beginning, so it becomes sort of difficult. Because so many things are there, it's so rich environment, so rich incident. So what to pay attention, what to focus. So that's difficult. But rather allow the mind to sort of freely observe something. Without any friction, without much effort, what you can observe. Say you are brushing the teeth. So recognize what is most prominent. Say you can feel the touching sensation of the brush, how it is touching the gums, how it is touching the, say, teeth. So that may be the most prominent sensation. So you can pay attention to that and assume using that you are maintaining it for 1 week, 2 weeks. So now you assume, now every time you do brushing of your teeth, you are mindful. So it's become sort of an easy aspect now. At the beginning it was difficult, but now it becomes a sort of a easy activity. You can easily establish mindfulness while brushing the teeth. Now don't stop there. So now you have fairly succeeded in this activity. You can be mindful at every time when you are brushing the teeth. Now see what is more available there. What are the other sensations available? What are the other minor sensations available? So therefore there's a very beautiful statement by the commentators telling Yatha pakatam vipassana abhiniveso. So whenever is evident, you start mindfulness practice or vipassana practice from there. And later you further establish your mindfulness there, improve mindfulness there. Once it is improved, you can inquire into the other subtle aspects. What are the other minor aspects available? Now because you are well established there, you can do this refined investigation, observation, in order to recognize these subtle aspects. So therefore, as you are mentioning, at the beginning if you start to see everything, it is difficult, but just recognize something prominent, something evident, and later once you develop mindfulness, then you can inquire all the other subtle aspects as well.
Question number 3 of 5 is a general question. Dear Bhante, it was mentioned that removing of defilements should be done based on the progress of practice. At some point, using mindfulness to identify defilements itself can become the process of removing. Is there a way we can gauge that this is the technique we should be using based on our practice? That's the end of the question.
Yeah, basically that's what I want to tell. So at the beginning we don't have that much of a developed mindfulness. So once we are trying to observe defilements, since our mindfulness is weak, we become a victim of the defilement. So they are so tempting. And immediately we lose our mindfulness, we lost the mindfulness, and we become a victim of the defilement. So, but later, our mindfulness is fairly established, fairly strong, and we have this, we have the capacity to look at the defilements as defilements. And since our mind is fairly sensitive, and we can recognize these defilements at their early stages. So the mindfulness itself is strong enough to handle it. And we clearly recognize the mindfulness shows us, warns us, now there's a hindrance arising, now there's a lust arising, now there's anger arising. So the mindfulness immediately warns us, immediately show us, and then we can apply any kind of a technique to remove it in a way. Remove it in the sense, now different techniques are there. Say for example, now there is lust available. So you can see how this lust has arisen. What are the fabrications you do? What are the constructions that you did? What are the little additions that you did? So likewise you can go a little backward to see how you fabricated it. So as a result, this whole thing become nullified, whole thing become blurred, started to fade away, because no more it isn't devil, no more it is something solid, rather everything appear like a series of thoughts. Or else you can simply see the arisen lust, this lustful state of the mind is little gross, fairly gross. It burdens the mind, but you were in a very clear state, you were in a very unburdened state, you were in a very lighter state. Comparatively now you are in a burdened state. So why are you holding to this burdened state? You can return back to this lighter state, simple state, clear state. So likewise many techniques Buddha has mentioned. So we can use any of these techniques, that is the application of the wisdom, in order to return back to that unattached, fairly pure state of mind. So therefore what you are telling is true in a way. So we can apply various methods to overcome defilements.
Question number 4 of 6. It's not clear, but I believe this is about mindful sitting. 2 questions. What should I do if I become sleepy while meditating? And the second one is, as a beginner, how long should I meditate for? That's the end of the questions.
Yeah, actually sleepiness can arise due to various reasons. So if you are spending a very busy life, doing a lot of multitasking, then the meditation, as you sit and have a comfortable sitting posture and assume that you are paying your attention to breathing, immediately it's calming down and you fall asleep. It's drowsiness. So that is very common thing. But one option is you can go to the walking session rather than sitting, because if you feel that you are continuously nodding and sleeping, then not much use continuing your sitting posture. Rather you can do a lot of walking. While doing walking practice, you can further develop mindfulness, awakefulness in the mind, and with that developed awakefulness, now you can practice sitting meditation. On the other hand, Buddha says, say you can sit in a little lighter place, illuminated place, rather than sitting in a gloomy place, because the outside environment illumination also has an impact on whether your drowsiness, whether your mind be active or inactive. And or else you can have some hot water before the sitting, you can have a good Ceylon tea before the sitting. You know, we have very good tea in Sri Lanka, so you can have a very good tea before the sitting, and all these are actually encouraging the mind, stimulating the mind, fairly energizing the mind. You can have that as well. And or else you can actually feel still quite lethargic. You can go outside, you can look at the sky, you can have a kind of a wide angle look of everything and you can little open your eyes, stimulate your eyes, have a good cup of tea, and then you can return back to the sitting. So likewise different techniques are there, and Buddha says if everything fails, you can have a good sleep. Yeah, back to you, Chatu.
Question number 5 of 7. This is a theory question. Dear Bhante, at the Bojjhanga level, the mindfulness highlighted, which shows the balance of various factors, is it just the mindfulness we know in the practice of something, or something much more matured and profound? I have heard of Satipanya, as explained by Bhikkhu and appreciate Bhante can explain this quality. That's the end of the question.
Yeah, we can say like that because first we may be establishing mindfulness, sati, and then slowly we start to investigate the phenomena as we discussed today. That is the investigation enlightenment factor, the Dhammavicaya Sambojjhanga. But before coming to the Dhammavicaya, we can say we are developing the Sampajanya. So we are trying to clearly comprehend the phenomena. We are trying to see all facets. We are trying to clearly know what is going on. So the Sati Sampajanya. So this is a kind of a coin word, Sati Sampajanya. So first we establish mindfulness and later Sampajanya, clear comprehension, also starts to work closely with the Sati, mindfulness. So the coin word comes as Sati Sampajanya. And later the Sati, the mindfulness and the knowledge or the wisdom go hand in hand, we can say. Then we can say it is Sati Panya. True. The Dhammavicaya Sambojjhanga is also there. Now the Panya, the faculty or Indriya is also, we can say. So we can say they are now working together. Mindfulness clearly show what is really going on, and the proper method or proper technique to be used to overcome defilement is decided by the wisdom. And there's a very beautiful verse coming in the Sutta Nipata. It says there are various defilements available in the mind. They are like a flood, what you call as auger, flooding, various auger, floods are there. And mindfulness appear like a dam. So when this flooding happens, all the flows of defilements are there. So you build this mindfulness dam. Then the defilements are a little restrained, blocked. And then Buddha says, the wisdom being utilized to completely evaporate them or completely dry them. So that is how Buddha sort of give a kind of a picture, kind of an analogy, how the defilements are being evaporated or being sort of dried out. Mindfulness appear like the function like a dam to stop them, to block them, and the wisdom being applied to evaporate them, to dry them. And Yani sotani lokasmin sati tesang nivaranam sotanang sangvaram brumi panyayete pitiyare. So this is how the Sutta Nipata explains that. So whatever the flows of defilements are there, floods of defilements are there, yani sotani lokasmin sati tesang nivaranam. The mindfulness are the blocking. Mindfulness is the block, the dam. Sotanang sangvaram brumi. I call it as the restrainment of the defilements. I call it as the containment of the defilement. And then panyayete pitiyare. Panya, the wisdom, is the one completely uprooting it, completely drying it out. So therefore you can say sati and panya doing a kind of a combined task to overcome the defilements.
Question number 6 of 8. This is a general question. Dear Venerable Bhante, to be mindful is to identify and first control taints and then later remove taints completely. Therefore, can we say a Sotapanna is a person who has removed 50% of the taints that arise in a person, and an Arahant is a person who has removed 100% of the taints that will arise in a person? Thank you, much merits. That's the end of the question.
I think I have to reduce the percentage for the Sotapanna because Buddha talks about 10 defilements, or what we call as Sangyojanas, fetters. So there are only 3 fetters being reduced or cut through in a Sotapanna. And when it comes to the second level, Sakadagami, nothing being uprooted but fairly diluted. The Kamaraga and Patiga, that is the lustful desire, and the aversion being little sort of diluted, fairly diluted. And at the third level, only those 2 are completely removed. So now 5 fetters are completely removed when one reaches Anagami. That is the non-return level. So there are 5 more fetters available, and they are called the upper fetters. Uddhang, the upper kind of fetters, and those 5 fetters are only uprooted when one becomes an arahant. So you have to now find a math formula to find the proper percentage.
We'll try Bhante.
Yeah.
Question number 7 of 8, mindful sitting. Most Venerable Bhante, during seated meditation, once the breath settles, you recommend looking at the mind and discourage active thinking. How then can one practice the 7th step discussed today, in which one needs to develop the bodhyangas? Or does one continue to sit passively and expect these to develop spontaneously, provided we keep the mind still? Or do we using virya, actively reflect on the Chittanupassana and Dhammanupassana parts? Much obliged for your clarification. That's the end of the question.
We can't say it is kind of passive every time. It depends on the situation. Now suppose your mind become fairly restless. So at that time, the task to do is to calm down. Rather than further aggravate the situation, you need to calm down the situation. On the other hand, assume that your mind become drowsy. Then you need to arouse energy. Now you need to further investigate, further improve the investigation. You need to arouse energy, arouse effort. So it depends on the situation. Either you are sort of little uplifting the mind or calming down the mind. So what is the question, Chatu? What is exactly he's asking?
Sorry, just give me 1 second.
Okay, I remember now.
How can you practice the 7th step?
Yeah, so it is not that you are thinking here, by the way. So don't think that you are thinking here. Thinking is not the investigation factor here. So you can do a little thinking, kind of a little, paying attention. But rather, investigation factor, this Dhammavicaya, is not that you are thinking according to certain books, certain Dhamma sermons, certain teachings. Rather, there are various phenomena at the moment focused, at the moment you are concentrated, and you do a careful examination. So once you do this careful examination, then you can recognize their behavior. So this is the Dhammavicaya enlightenment factor. This is the investigation enlightenment factor. It is not that you are encouraging thinking here. I hope it is clear.
If the person didn't have if it was unclear, please submit a new question for us. We'll go to the next one. Question number 8. This is a theory question. Dear Venerable Bhante, with regards to Dhammadesana today, you mentioned that the arrived unattached mind, or clear mind, can get distorted by my own mental habit. At this stage, is it better to analyze the cause of these mental habits and show the mind, the word here I'm not sure, and show the mind something of the mental habit? Much merits, and with metta, that's the end of the question.
Yeah, I think it is good because as we are sort of familiarizing with this unattached mind, as we are familiarizing with this clear mind, restful mind, calm mind, relaxed mind, so when mind become agitated, so we can recognize what are the causes of this agitation, what are the reasons. So reasons could be kind of a habit. Reasons could be sort of a habitual tendency. So once we recognize that habit, that tendency, then we can, rather than promoting it, we can allow it to fade away. We are allowing it to dilute, allowing it to go away. So this is how Buddha asks us to do the proper practice, where we need to recognize what is really going on, and we can there recognize it may be due to sort of craving, due to sort of tanha, and what to do onto tanha. That is just to let it go. Pahatabbang. So now you are not sort of promoting that craving, you are not become a victim of that craving, you are not trying to satisfy that craving, rather you recognize it as the craving and you simply let it go. You allow it to fade away. You are not promoting it, you are not fertilizing it, you are not becoming driven by it, rather you allow it to go. So you have to have this again kind of detached observation here, clearly recognize the cause of the situation, cause of the agitation, cause of the situation, and then the cause, most probably it is a tanha, craving. Craving has to be let go of. Dukkha samudayam pahatabbam. So that is how we need to operate in a way in order to return back to the clarity. Yeah.
Bhante, is it okay if we go a bit over time? We have 2 more questions.
Okay, maybe 5 more minutes.
Okay. Question 8 of 9, theory question. Dear Venerable Bhante, with regards to Dhammadeshana today, you mentioned that the arrived unattached... Sorry.
That you all mentioned.
Sorry, I said this.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's only one more question, it's a general question.
Yeah.
Is there a particular time of the day that is best to meditate? That's the end.
It depends on you. You can try various times. So you need to find your own best time, and it is not a kind of a rule that we can say, okay, everyone, this is the best time, but rather you need to try various times. Suppose just after you are waking up, you can try. Just after, say, having a bath, you can try, or during the morning time you can try, during the evening time you can try, during the night you can try. As you are sort of trying at many different times, then you may understand, okay, this is the proper time, this is the best time that my mindfulness is well sharpened. I am feeling quite comfortable. Mindfulness is improving without much difficulty. So likewise, you yourself have to find out the best time. It depends on the person, it depends on the environment, climate. There are many causes, and you have to investigate on what is the best time for me. Yeah.
That ends our questions for today.
Fine.
So I'd like to sum up and conclude the session. So first of all, I'd like to thank Bhante and Pastor Bhante for giving valuable time for this program, and also to the organizers working behind the scenes, and also the people who are seen and unseen who are participating or helping out with this program. And lastly, to the participants, because without you, this program would not happen. So with that, I'd like to conclude the session. Thero Sarana.
Theruvan Saranai Sukhi Hotu.